In the pork industry, we work on crises from an industry-wide perspective and response plan. So our response is not just from the National Pork Board, it's a coordinated effort of the National Pork Board, the National Pork Producers Council, American Association of Swine Veterinarians, and the U.S. Meat Export Federation. So my role is to coordinate all those entities and working on the communication side of response in coordination with our operations partners, making sure that we're able to move forward through the disease. What I'm here today as, though, is a member of the cross-species FMD communications team. The cross-species FMD communications team actually started during the 2001 UK FMD outbreak. It became rapidly apparent that our industries needed to be working together to deal with the potential of an FMD outbreak in the U.S. Since that time, we've made a lot of progress, and obviously there's always room for more progress, but in ways that we work together. And this is an effort of the beef, dairy, and pork industries. So the core group is made up by Dairy Management Incorporated, the Beef Checkoff, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and the Pork Checkoff and the National Pork Board. And I'm here to carry the message of what we're doing as a coordinated cross-species effort as it relates to FMD. Our group first got together talking about how we could protect animal health and minimize the disease spread, also ensuring consumer confidence of meat and milk, as well as preventing the supply disruption. And the speakers that we heard from earlier today, both in this session as well as in the morning session, really listed these as some of the key efforts that need to happen out there to make sure that we can continue to provide a safe food supply here in the U.S. The way we're going to reach those goals is really creating a unified response FMD crisis plan, and that's unified across beef, dairy, and pork across those three species, sharing a unified FMD message and forming partnerships, both government and other partnerships, to help with that coordinated response. What I want to talk to you about, though, to start with, is from a consumer perspective. Do consumers understand what foot and mouth disease is or what the potential could be? We've done a lot of research to try to understand what consumers are thinking when it comes to FMD, if they have any idea or not, and then how we would create our messaging and how we would continue to operate in the realm that our consumers are operating to make sure that we can get that message across effectively. This first slide really shows that consumers have a complete lack of understanding of foot and mouth disease, which is what you would expect. Why would they have an understanding of foot and mouth disease? 72% of consumers, however, think that FMD affects humans, and 69% of consumers think that you can get FMD from eating meat or drinking milk products. So as you can see right at the ground level, we've got to get those messages and be able to communicate them effectively. More than 2/3 or more than 3/4 actually are concerned about how FMD would impact their family. And we've seen this with other situations. H1N1 was mentioned earlier, BSE, as you look back over the history of the livestock industries and the meat and milk supply in situations where we have had consumers not understand what actually happens. So 42% of consumers say they would stop drinking milk if there was an FMD outbreak in the U.S. That is really that is a basic lack of understanding of how the disease operates, and that's really where our role is. As we talked about consumers, or talked with consumers, we wanted to know what worried them the most specific to FMD, so again, we can build that response plan and strategies around this. According to consumers, most consumers care about how FMD will impact the health of their families, and we saw this with H1N1 and other situations. The first impact is at that family level, and then from there it moves out. In FMD specifically, it would be how it would impact the health of their families. They want to be certain that their food is safe to serve to their families. They don't want to have to change their purchasing pattern and their preparation or consumption behavior. And we understand that consumers are very fickle. They want to stay in the path that they've been in, and if we can provide something that is going to allow for the least amount of disruption, then in the end we'll be able to maintain that market to the best of our ability. Consumers also are going to be looking for more information, and they need to have that information and have it easily accessible. We want to make sure that information is coming from us as opposed to others who may be jumping into the situation to try to promote their agenda, which may not be in the best interest of agriculture here in the U.S. So we also did research to understand who the best spokespeople are out there. And there's a lot of different kinds of research on who the best spokespeople are. This is specific to foot and mouth disease. Industry spokespeople are the most credible in reassuring when their responses are consistent and are provided by a variety of sources. Hence, bringing together this group, the dairy, beef, and pork industries working together, making sure that we all get that same message and that we're able to communicate the same message out there. Livestock producers are credible, but only when talking about what's happening at the farm level, what's happening specifically on their farm. Local government is more credible than federal agencies when, again, speaking at that local level, because, again, all politics are local, that saying. So local government is very credible, and then the federal government becomes more credible when looking at the overall perspective of it. And veterinarians are the most credible source for consumers for health information about foot and mouth disease. And this research that we've done is just a few years old, but in that time we've seen how the pet industry has changed. So the veterinarians are going to be not just the large animal veterinarians, which you would expect, but also the small animal veterinarians, which can also carry that message because pets really have become part of the family. We did research on what words work and what words didn't work. And this morning, I think we've heard just about every phrase that we've got in the what words don't work column towards consumers. Basically, consumers want to know that there is a plan. There is something out there. Somebody's taking care of it. They want to have examples of how the situation's been handled in the past and how it's been handled successfully. They want to have, for instance, pasteurization with milk. What are ways that we can protect that food supply? They need to know that it's not a threat to people or to their pets. No human risk, no human health risk, and in just the past week we've actually changed our human health risk to no public health risk, trying to stay in tune with the current vernacular. That it doesn't affect the safety of meat or milk. Producers are working with their vets and their local government, again pulling in those credible spokespeople. And then vets are working with farmers and ranchers to stop the spread of the disease. But what words don't work? If you look at this list, when you're talking about the operation side of a disease response, these are words that you'll more than likely hear. We've got to find ways to be able to communicate the same message, but with words that aren't so frightening to our consumers. Highly contagious in quarantines. Talked about roadblocks and stop movement and those kind of things earlier today. Quite scary. Protect their livelihood. Consumers aren't concerned if a producer is going to be in business or not at this point because they don't understand how that impacts them down the road. What they're concerned the most about is their own livelihood, their own safety, I should say. Protecting the animals. There's a lot of animal welfare discussions. In fact, there's one just down the hall from here. In this case, what consumers want to know is they're safe and their pets are safe and that they can go on about their lives. Whether we're protecting our animals or not is much further down the road for consumers when it comes to understanding this disease. Economically devastating, most consumers, that's really not a care for them because what they're, again, concerned about is their own personal safety through this. Whether animals are being euthanized, yes, we fully expect that activists and others will capitalize on the burning pyres that we've seen through the UK and through other situations. But most consumers, unless that's fed to them by a group with a different agenda, aren't really going to be concerned about that. Again, it's their own personal safety that they're concerned about. Pats on the head, they don't want to hear that the industry is doing good things or that the government's doing the right thing to take care of the situation. They want to see it fixed and make it go away. And then whether it's endemic or epidemic, these are terms that the average consumer doesn't understand. Again, they want to know that their food supply is safe and that they can go on about their lives. So based on the research that was done with the consumers, we put together some core messages. These are just the 3 top-line bullet points, and each one of these bullet points we have about 5 supporting points, but for the purpose of the slide I wanted to go ahead and just get these 3 points up there. And they incorporate the research that was done. These messages have been tested. Foot and mouth disease is a serious animal disease, but it does not affect food safety. Right there, point blank. We want to make sure that they understand that meat and milk is going to be safe through this situation. The livestock community is working closely with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We want to pull them in because they're a credible source, veterinarians, another credible source, and the local government, so we get the top 3 credible sources in there to contain this disease quickly. And farmers and ranchers are committed to caring for their animals as we work with the USDA to contain this disease. Protecting the security and well-being of animal herds is our top priority. We do want to make sure that we're out there in front of the activists or the others who are going to try to make this into an animal welfare issue when it happens, with how we are protecting those animals. Some of the things that we've done to this point already as a cross-species team is really work to have an umbrella for all of our outreach. So each of our species group, beef, dairy, and pork, have individual crisis plans specific to foot and mouth disease. But what we have accomplished is pulling together those plans so that there is an industry-wide, non-species or cross-species specific crisis plan. And that plan helps us to know what, for instance, the pork industry knows what the beef industry or what the dairy industry is doing at any given time throughout this crisis. More importantly, what it does is allow us to stand up and speak with one voice, making sure that we're communicating out the same message across all the different people who would be communicating. One of the things that we've had a lot of discussions about is understanding if the disease breaks in one species first, the potential is that it will be across all 3 species very rapidly, probably within a 24-hour period or less. So we've decided that and agreed that we will all stand up and speak together, the beef, dairy, and pork industry being supportive of each other. Again, we want to communicate that message, make sure we're carrying out that information with a common voice, so that whether you talk to a veterinarian who is a beef-specific veterinarian, or whether you talk to somebody in the pork industry, or whether you talk to somebody at APHIS, that it all is that same message. And we think that that's probably the most critical in maintaining that consumer confidence. We're also trying not to duplicate efforts and to work smart. Obviously, everybody's working under limited dollars these days, so if we're competing against each other to get messages out, in this situation that doesn't help any of us. In some situations, obviously, we compete against each other as protein sources, but in this situation, it's the industries that are at stake, not just the share of the dollar. So we want to make sure that we're working together, maximizing those efforts during any kind of a crisis situation, and able to help each other. Some of us have resources that some of the others may not have, and we're able to work together. And the goal there, again, obviously eliminate that consumer confusion. Foot and mouth disease is not a food safety issue. Consumers are going to get foot and mouth disease confused with BSE, probably with H1N1 now, with all these other things that are out there that we're all comfortable and familiar with, but that the consumer doesn't have the background information. So we want to make sure that we eliminate that confusion and have that strong messaging that carries that meat and milk supply is safe message. Our umbrella crisis plan is it's a very interesting tool, and it's really it's helped each one of us individually from a species standpoint to put together this umbrella tool, because we've been able to gain from each other's knowledge and from each other's umbrella or crisis tools, but putting it together under that unified umbrella so that we all understand how to move forward. Approved message platforms, and these messages, when you try to pull together beef, dairy, and pork and come up with one message, sometimes there is some jockeying of positions and jockeying of information that happens, but this group has really worked well to pull together these basic cross-species messages, knowing then that we will also have our species-specific message, but will carry the cross-species tone. We have standby statements, media fact sheets, the economic importance of FMD, or the potential of FMD, comparing agriculture from 1929 when the last FMD outbreak was to where we are today. And then we also, as one of our tools, have a website. And we've had a website for about 10 years. We're in the process right now, and hopefully we'll have it ready to open up here in about 2 weeks or so. footandmouthdiseaseinfo.org, our old website, which has been running as fmdinfo.org. That information is completely being revamped. It will look more like this. We are going to have this website up and running now, even prior to a potential situation in the U.S. It's good basic information about foot and mouth disease. We want to make sure that we're out there and that we're established in the social media community. And I think in a later slide I'll talk more about our social media efforts. One of the other things that we've undertaken in the last year and a half that we're very excited about too is the ability to communicate and to partner with our good friends in the ag trade media, knowing that they're going to be very critical in carrying information to our producers, but sometimes they also serve as spokespeople to national media and to other media who are looking for sources. So we want to make sure that anybody who's talking about what's going to happen to foot and mouth disease or happen when foot and mouth disease hits in the beef, dairy, and pork industry is familiar with the plan, that there is a plan, there is an umbrella plan, and how it operates and what those points are going to be. We worked very closely with APHIS on this event. In fact, the trade media event was actually held at the Emergency Operations Center in Riverdale, which was a great experience for our media friends to go out and see that facility and to understand what all will be going on in the event of a situation. We also did a tabletop session for the farm broadcasters so that they could understand how they would plan their coverage of a situation. Sounds a little bit out there to work with the media ahead of an event like this, but what we wanted to do again is to help them so that they're comfortable and they know where to turn for good factual information, as opposed to filling the void themselves with others who may not have the information that we would like for them to be sharing through their airways. Our relationship development has, I would say, over the last 10 years has been a critical component of this cross-species team. Working with APHIS, and I will have to say that Ed Curlett and the communications team at APHIS, as well as Dr. Zach, has been very supportive of this effort. And without their help through this, I think that we would have had a lot tougher challenge. And having that relationship now in the calm of non-FMD in this country is very, very important, so we don't have to try to build those relationships when we get to the point of dealing with the situation. USDA communications and USDA in general, obviously the Office of the Secretary will be communicating quite extensively during an FMD outbreak, as we saw during H1N1. We want to make sure again that they're comfortable with what has been developed from the cross-species team, and again are able to carry those messages and that they understand the relationship between APHIS and the cross-species team as well. American Meat Institute, Matt talked about the packers and the need to have packers involved in this situation, working with them to help them understand the plan and be a part of this plan. We know that beef, dairy, and pork are not the only species that are susceptible to FMD. We're trying to work with the other species groups and the other industries to get them more involved in the process. Really, it's been a case of a shortage of funding to this point with some of the other species groups, and we're at the point with ASI that we're trying to pull them in and not worry so much about the funding side of the equation. And then the U.S. Meat Export Federation, obviously our trading partners are going to be very critical to us in this type situation, so we want to make sure that NEF is part of the core group, if you will. We met last week, actually, to revise our social media plan. When you have a group that's been around for 10 years, you continue to work on things as you move forward, but social media has changed so much, even in the last 2 years. That we really created and restructured our social media plan to make sure that we're out there and that we're prepared and that we have a voice that's ready to go in the social media aspect. Anybody who's familiar with social media at all understands that how rapidly things can change and what how much of a hinge in a crisis social media can be to us. So working with our folks to carry the appropriate message and make sure that they're prepared, whether it's paying for search terms so that we're not competing against each other. If beef and pork are both looking for the same, both trying to purchase the same search terms, all we're doing is bidding against each other and raising that price. So we want to make sure that the cross-species team has the overall social media plan that we're all a part of, and then we'll also have our individual plans. Continually refreshing that heat of the battle plan. H1N1 did prove to be a great learning experience for all of us, and we've been able to go back and walk through that situation and have some outside assistance helping to understand the situation and what could have been done through that. Through any kind of a crisis, we're able to better learn. And so we've been refreshing the heat of the battle plan for the cross-species team based on some of those learnings and learnings from other situations around the world. Continuing to build those relationships, and one thing that we haven't been as strong at that we would like to accomplish in the next 12 months is really to make this more of a North American plan, bringing the Canadian folks into the fold, if you will, on our cross-species team, and then continue our communications with our state associations and our stakeholders. So not only the folks that we're building these relationships with understand, but those who are going to be expected to carry out the situation, to carry out the communications plan in the event of a situation also are comfortable and understand with it. Again, these are the folks, Jackie Matson with NCBA, Stacy Stevens with DMI, and then myself are the core group on the cross-species team. We just really wanted to share with you today that industry has been working very diligently on this, and I know sometimes we haven't been able to reach out to all the audiences that we would like, and we find a new audience to reach out to, and we find 5 more new audiences at that opportunity.